Now, have you ever wondered, right, why your energy seems to rise and fall, even when life's going good? Right? Why success will often fade and failure will eventually pass? Right? Why inspiration comes in waves and then it will disappear? And why the wise man says, this too shall pass. This is not random, it's not personal, it's rhythm. Right? Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The Kabbalion. Now, this principle doesn't just describe nature, it explains you. It teaches you why life swings and how to find your still point in the middle. So, today we're going to dive deep into the principle of rhythm. Okay, a law that governs not just the universe, but your mood, your relationships, your energy, your purpose. And by the end of today's video, you will understand how to ride life cycles without getting drowned in them, how to stay steady through those emotional highs and lows, and how to work with your energy and not against it. And I'll give you some tools to stick in your toolbox so that you can transform chaos into flow, pain into peace. Right? Because let me take you back to a time a few years ago, right? My life felt like it was a roller coaster with no brakes. Right? After my third rehab and a profound spiritual awakening, I thought I finally cracked the code to this thing called life, right? I was hitting the gym, I was meditating, I was journaling, I was reading all of this before anybody else in the house was awake. I was eating clean, I was sober. I had days, sometimes weeks, where I felt like I was flying high, right? High on purpose, grateful, aligned, like I'd finally stepped into the man that I was meant to be. And then out of nowhere, boom, crash. Trying to get out of bed felt like a struggle. My thoughts were turning dark. I felt heavy, angry, confused. And I just remember thinking, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just, stay the same or stay on the high? So I did. I was angry. I was frustrated. Like I was flawed. Like every time I was making progress, life would just like pull the rug from underneath me. And it wasn't until I read the book The Kabbalion for what seemed like the 100th time that I finally understood what was going on with me. And I finally understood why I felt so drawn to this book. Right? The principle of rhythm. Okay, this is such an important principle that often gets overlooked. Okay, the pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Right? That's from the Kabbalion. And when I read that line, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. Now, it didn't make the pain go away or it didn't explain the pain away. Right? It didn't give me a hack or a quick fix. It gave me something far more powerful, and that was the awareness. Okay, I was not broken. I was just in the swing. And when the penny finally dropped, that's when things started to change. Right? Because I could stop resisting these lows. Right? I could track the patterns. So instead of forcing myself to stay up, I started preparing to ride the down with grace. Right? And there was no more shame, no more panic. I was able to just sit there and be present. And the principle of rhythm, it taught me how to master the flow. Okay, and this isn't about staying high all the time, but learning how to move wisely through every single phase without getting caught or losing myself. Okay, it's not about avoiding the crash, it's learning how to ride it like a warrior. Okay, and if you want to understand this, let's go a little bit deeper. Your mind is not built for endless acceleration, right? The human psyche is deeply attuned to cycles, just like nature, right? Carl Jung, he called this the circumambulation of self, right? This is a spiraling journey, not a straight line. So every high has its come down. Every push demands a pause. Now, some people might think this is weakness, but it's not. It's wiring. Psychologically, we thrive through integration, right? Not constant escalation, right? In modern life, it will often teach us to fear stillness. Well, it did me because I never liked to be still, right? And then it tells you recovery is failure. But that's a trauma response rooted in performance identity. When you live high for those peaks, you ignore the valleys, right? And the valleys is actually where the gold is buried. Because if you want to understand why you keep burning out, overthinking, getting lost in the resistance, it's because you're not honoring the rhythm of your nervous system and it needs that to regulate itself. Okay, because this isn't about being inconsistent. This is about getting it aligned with your inner tempo. Because everything in your biology, it moves in rhythm, right? Brain waves, they cycle through delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, and they each have their own function. Hormones, right? Cortisol, testosterone, dopamine, serotonin, they spike up and down based on your circadian rhythm. Okay, and so what does that mean? It means that if you're trying to force the high output 24/7, you're not just exhausting your willpower, you're fighting your biology. And if you look at top athletes, Navy SEALs, elite creators, CEOs, they don't run at full throttle all day long. They train in waves, they work in waves, and they recover in waves. And they know how to switch gears when needed. Peak performance doesn't come from constant go, 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 right? It comes from cyclical optimization. You ride the wave, you don't get drowned in it. And then if you look at the Hermetic philosophy, rhythm is law. Okay, as the Kabbalion says, everything flows out and in, everything has its tides. Day becomes night, inhale becomes exhale, creation becomes destruction. So rebirth can follow. If you fight rhythm, you're fighting the universe. If you honor rhythm, then you're merging with source. Because the masculine often clings to structure, force, direction. But spirit, it teaches us that true strength includes surrender. And when you trust the rhythm, you stop panicking during those lows. You realize that the fall is actually needed. It's fertilizing my rise. And see that stillness? That's when you're sharpening your tools. Because life is never off. It's simply moving through another phase of the rhythm. And see if you can have that shift in perception. That is an awakening in itself. Right? It's about accepting the season without complaining about it. Right? As Marcus Aurelius wrote, he said, observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the whole loves nothing so much as to change what it is and make new things like it. So the Stoics, they didn't fear downturns, they trained for them. They understood that all of life is a flux, change, motion, swing. Right? They didn't seek external highs. They sought inner harmony in the face of the external shifts. So a true Stoic doesn't ask, how can I avoid the winter? No, he will ask, how can I remain rooted when the cold comes? They practice premeditation malorum, imagining the low tide before it hits. Not to be pessimistic, but to stay ready. So if you can sit in the discomfort of your current season without complaint, you then reclaim your power so you can choose how to move through it. Right? This is Stoic rhythm, right? Power through poise. Okay, and if you look at Taoism, right, rhythm is essence. In the To Te Ching, it says that the sage stays behind, thus he is ahead. He is detached, thus at one with all. Right, so Eastern masters, they don't rush, they flow. Right, whether it's the sword of Kendo, the breath of Qigong, or the silent stance of a Shaolin monk, they train in the pause as much as the strike. You know, rhythm in Eastern discipline, that is sacred. If you look how they move, how they act, right? It's not just when to act, but when not to act, when to pull back, when to yield, when to listen. Right? The Shaolin, they understand that the space between movement is as important as the movement itself. Right? If you look at music, it's the rest between notes that gives the melody meaning. And this is the same as your life. Stillness is not stagnation, right? This is the field in which clarity emerges. Right? So the Eastern warrior doesn't rush the process, and neither should you. He aligns with the rhythm of nature. And because of that, he becomes unstoppable because he moves when it's time. Okay? You're not here to fight the flow. You're here to master it. And see, when most men, when they hit that low, what do? Right? They panic, they spiral, they distract, they numb, right? They mistake the ebb, the low, for the end. If you want to live like an awakened savage, he understands something deeper. He knows life moves in cycles, and his job isn't to control the wave, is to ride it with precision, with awareness, and to trust. He's not a slave to those energy dips, those emotional lows, or these external setbacks. He reads them like terrain. And when the tide rises, he surges. And when the tide pulls back, he sharpens, he recovers, he prepares. Because his identity is not attached to the moment, it's anchored in the rhythm. He's rooted in the observer's seat, not the reaction. Right? He will train himself to recognize high energy isn't better, low energy isn't worse. Both are necessary. Both are part of the path. And he will stop defining himself by his performance in a single phase, and he will step into mastery by honoring the whole cycle. And this shift changes everything, because then you're no longer judging yourself for needing to rest, clinging to the highs out of the fear of the low, sabotaging the climb because you didn't prepare for the descent. Right? It's about becoming a tactician of timing, right? A master of seasons, a man who can move in harmony with reality, not against it. Because when you do this, you know that discipline is honoring the wave. Wisdom is knowing when to wait. Power is moving when the rhythm says it's time. This is the rhythm of the awakened savage, right? He doesn't fear the silence, right? He sharpens himself in it, right? He doesn't cling to the high. He respects it. He doesn't run from the low, from the crash. He rises again with deeper alignment. This isn't just flow. This is war with grace, presence with peace, chaos held in rhythm, right? Because see, before I understood rhythm, right, I would beat myself up every time I felt low, right, tired, right? I'd force myself to push harder, right, unmotivated, right? I'd spiral into guilt. If I was sad or confused, I'd try to fix it with some type of action or distraction, right? I felt like I was either on fire or I was failing. Right? I didn't know there was a rhythm underneath it all, right? A deeper current, a cycle I was fighting because I didn't understand. And when the high faded, I would panic. And that panic made me feel low, right? It made me feel worse than I actually needed to feel. So I'd sabotage, I would numb, I would disappear, or I'd collapse under the fucking weight of shame. Because I thought that if I'm not crushing it every single day, then I'm failing. Right? And when I finally understood the principle of rhythm, and not just that, but the whole book of the Kabbalion, it really taught me so much in life. But the swing to the right is the swing to the left, right? Because life moves in waves. Energy rises, then rests. Inspiration flows, then pauses. Emotion expands and contracts, right? And once I understood that none of it was wrong, then I could stop fighting it. Right? So now I understand. I ask myself, what season am I in right now? Right? What's this dip teaching me? How can I ride this instead of resisting it? Right? Because I struggled with emotions for so long. Emotions was something that really put me into relapses, fights, everything. But because I made this shift, I stopped over identifying with emotions. Because I would say, I'm anxious. Now I'm just like, I'm in a low energy rhythm. So I slow down, I stay present, and I know it's going to pass, so I let it pass. This one shift gave me power when I would normally go into panic. And also now I plan my life around my energy, not my ego. Right? I'm no longer trying to, dominate every single day. I design my days and my weeks around my rhythm. So I have deep work and peak energy windows throughout the day, creative play or rest in low energy phases. Right? I respect the dip, right? Instead of shaming it. And see, by doing that, it made me more productive, more peaceful, and a better person to be around. Right? And also, I made peace with my past because I used to look at everything, my relapses, my failures, my stalls, and I had so much guilt and shame. Now I look at them, I've gained so much wisdom for these. Every single breakdown was a swing back to prepare me for the strong return. So I don't have any like regrets as such. I have regrets, but I'm still grateful for all of it because without everything in my past, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have the wisdom I need to help others. Right. And it really helped me deepen my spiritual practice. Right. It became a part of how I meditate, I journal, I reflect. Instead of just clinging to the highs, I now soften in those lows because I understand it. Nothing is permanent. right? That's why they say this too shall pass. They used to say that in AA and NA and all these meetings I used to go to, and I used to wonder what the fuck are they talking about? But this too shall pass, right? Nothing's permanent. Let it go. Ride the wave, right? Let that become your mantra, a way of moving through life. Okay, and I stopped living in resistance. Okay, now I can live in rhythm. And see that shift? It gives me deeper peace, focused productivity. And if we just look at some of the symbolism, right? Like the pendulum, right? Every swing has a counter swing. So when life feels high, the rhythm will pull you into stillness or the shadow. So trying to stay up all the time, it's like trying to hold your breath. You're going to suffocate. Rhythm is breath. Life is breath. And if you just look at the ocean tides or the moon phases, right, the moon governs the tides, sleep, hormones, and emotion. Tides rise and fall, just like your energy, your purpose, and your clarity. Life doesn't move in straight lines. It moves in spirals. Learn to ride it and rise with grace. This isn't about floating through life on good vibes only. It's about building a tactical relationship with your energy, your cycles, and your seasons. Right? Right? Let me give you some tools for the toolbox. Okay, number one, rhythm mapping. This is where you track your natural cycles. Right? So see for 30 days, track your physical, your emotional, and your mental energy. Right? Use a journal, a spreadsheet, or you get these apps like Notion or Rise that you can use. Right? So for every morning and the evening, ask yourself, how do I feel emotionally? How's my physical energy? How sharp or foggy is my thinking? But also note things like the time of day you're taking this note at, right? The quality of sleep you had the night before. Your food intake, is it, have you been eating the right food, the shitty food? Have you been eating enough food or not enough food? How are you feeling stressed? Where's your stress levels at? I'm stressed, I'm not, I'm feeling at peace. Also, your work demands, are you in a busy work week or are you on holiday this week? And also, how's your environment? Is it chaotic, calm, overstimulating? Right? These all play a part in it. Okay, so for example, right, your mornings between 9 and 12, right, you're feeling mentally sharp, you're emotionally at peace. Okay, afternoons, between 3 and 4, right, you feel sluggish and scattered, right, then about 6 o'clock in the evening, you feel creative again. Okay, and then on a Friday, you feel expansive and reflective. On a Sunday, you feel anxious, right? So, in short, you've noticed that you're more focused between 9 and 12, you get tired at 3, and you feel creative again at 6. Right? So, what you want to do is you want to learn to schedule your most important tasks around those peak hours. Right? So, on Mondays between 9 and 12, these might be best time for coaching calls or creative writing. Right? In the afternoon, when you're sluggish, this could be for admin and recovery. Right? On Fridays, when you're feeling expansive and reflective, you could do journaling and content ideas. On a Sunday, when you're feeling anxious, this could be when you do a grounding ritual for yourself. Okay, it's important to sync your projects to your peak cycles, right? Because when you plan key creative or performance output during your non-peak windows, then you're going to maximize your output. Okay, and this is why how high performance stay consistent without burning out. They ride their own waves, they know their own waves, so they don't have to wait for motivation. They schedule in their own mastery. Okay, number two, right? Micro pulse productivity. Right? This is when you want to work in waves. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to use short, focused work blocks. So you could try 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off, or 90 minutes on, 15 minutes off, or 90 minutes on, 30 minutes off, right? But during the on times, you're just eliminate distractions, you're going all in, focusing on your deep work. And then during the off times, right, you're switching off. You go out, you move, you stretch, you breathe, you go outside, get some fresh air. Okay? It's it's important because your brain functions in rhythms. If you're trying to push past your natural limit, that will lead to scattered energy and shallow output. So when you're doing these little short blocks, this keeps you in high frequency execution mode. Okay? Right, number three, cycle awareness. Okay, this is when you stop judging your off days. So see the next time you feel tired, off, or unmotivated, don't panic or shame yourself. Just say something like this. I'm in a downswing. That's normal. I don't need to fight it. I just need to move through it. Right? So instead of thinking that I've lost my edge, right, you just know that your energy's low today and you'll do what you can and you don't have to force it. Right? You can go for a walk, take care of the basics, and just rest knowing that the upswing is coming. Right? And This works because you stop mistaking your lows for failure and you start seeing them as just part of the process. And this keeps your self worth high or steady and also your long term momentum going. Okay, number 4, a weekly reset. Right, so we reflect, we don't react. So once a week, I do mine on a Sunday evening. Just take 10 minutes to reflect. Okay, what phase was I in this week? Was it high energy, low energy? What worked? What didn't? Right? What do I need to do more of next week? Right. So, for example, you realize that midweek that you were pushing too hard, so you hit a wall. So next week, you know what? I'm going to block off Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to go for a walk or I'm going to do some learning. Right? I'm not going to do any output. And this keeps you aligned instead of reactive. These small adjustments each week lead to big, massive changes over time. Number 5, a rhythm recovery ritual. Right? See, when you hit an emotional or energetic rock bottom, like we all do, have a reset ritual ready, right? And create your own. Okay, I'll give you an example of one you can use. Okay, so the 3-part ritual. The first part is a grounding act. So you could walk barefoot on the grass, or you could do some box breathing, some breath work. Okay, the second part is a reflective act. So journal, right? What am I resisting? Right, and then the third one is a recalibration act. So that could be a cold shower, a workout, or just planning your next step. Right, and this stops you spiraling, and you can start cycling. Right, you can prove to your nervous system that every low has a rise coming. Right, most people who don't understand this, they're the slave to the wave. Okay, they rise when life lets them, and they crash when life pulls them down. Right, they're praying for good days, and then they run for when shit gets hard, and they wonder why they stay stuck in these cycles that they don't understand. Right, but this is what we're learning here today. You're here because some part of you knows that rhythm isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. When you stop trying to force the tide, right, when you stop making the lows wrong and the highs sacred, you stop being a passenger and you start becoming the pilot. Right, you no longer fight the cycle, you flow inside it with precision. Right, that's what mastery is. Not forcing the constant high, but just navigating through it with awareness, power, and precision through all states. Right, without collapsing, without avoidance, without ego. Let the world chase peak states. Right, you become the one who's unshakable in every single phase. Right, life will always rise and fall. Right, but it's not the wave that defines a warrior. It's how you move through it. And if you're ready to keep walking this path, if you're ready to stop reacting and start responding with that conscious strength, then hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Come and join me on this journey. Right, give me a wee comment below. I'm riding the wave. And share this with a brother who's stuck in the crash, waiting for the tide to save him. Because remember, the wave doesn't save you. You learn to surf it. And then you lead others through the storm. And as always, I truly appreciate you guys. I love you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being on this journey with me. And I'll see you on the next one. I've got a video here and you can subscribe here. Take care. Bye.